Where banks are silent, we speak. A podcast by UMushroom.
Hello everybody and welcome back to our podcast What Your Bank Doesn't Tell You. Today we have the topic theme investing and especially theme investing in a very volatile market. This topic of theme investing came up about 20 years ago when many banks implemented different investment topics, and one of the pioneers in this field was also Robeco, and I'm very glad to have you, Ralf Oberbanscheidt, today with me at the table discussing theme investing and also revealing all the secrets about this topic. Welcome.
Thank you, Tonia, for having me here. My pleasure to enlighten people about thematics.
Glad to hear. So your career goes back almost 30 years. So you hold a degree in business from the University of Trier in Germany. You also hold an MBA from Monterey in California. And I just learned some very interesting stories about this beautiful city, apparently. I haven't been there, I have to admit. And after your studies, you joined DWS, or in English, DWS, so maybe back then the arm of Deutsche Bank, I assume, on the asset management side. Later on, you became independent. You founded your own asset management company in 2010, and you were heading there the portfolio management, and later you also held the CFO position. And since 2023, you joined Robeco. You're heading their theme investing, and you're also part of the management of the executive board here in Switzerland. So I'm thrilled to have you here at the table and discussing with you theme investing. Robeco, I believe most of our listeners, they have heard about Robeco. We also had a colleague of yours some months back on a podcast, but maybe in a few words, if you could introduce your company.
Easy and happy to do so. Robeco is a Rotterdam, Netherlands-based asset manager. We have about 1,100 employees, so it's very sizable, about 230 billion under management. So really focusing on fundamental equity, on quant investing, fixed income. We have a focus on sustainability, as many of the listeners might know. And we also have thematic as part of our offering. And we have a very well-rooted, founded Dutch culture. Company was founded about 95 years ago. So something not to be underestimated in today's world. I'm happy to be part of that team.
What's special of the Dutch culture in this sense?
I mean, I don't want to stereotype, and I think it's a very harmonious society. A lot of really thinking things through, and no rushed decision. I'm generalizing it sometimes. Of course, necessary. I think that's curious. We always try within thematic, but also within the company, always pushing ourselves a little bit further. So it's. Again, one has to respect different cultures. I'm originally from Germany, have lived in the US a lot, and there's always the little nuances that might throw you off and that you want to understand before you work for them. But I'm based in Switzerland as well, which we know is also not Germany. So
exactly, again, a different culture to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So coming back to theme investing, and I mean, I'm following this topic, theme investing, for many years already. And I mentioned before there was a big kind of push or many banks, they discovered theme investing at the beginning of the year 2000, I would say. And over the past few years, I also observed that the trend of theme investing maybe decreased a little bit because we had such strong markets, and the markets were also a lot driven by the US tech companies. So if you would judge, how has theme investing evolved in your eyes, and where do we stand today?
Couple of thoughts on that subject. So thematic about 20 years ago was like its own category. It was the more free-spirited. People looked at markets with a different lens, away from sectors, away from countries. So it was its own style of investing. And over the last decade, we morphed and blended further into. So you get pockets of sector investing, you get pockets of global, you look into value chain. So more and more people follow this, and there's more nuances then as well. So themes that were launched 25 years ago dealt with water, for instance. Now they become very granular. Like some are really small, and you only find 10, 11 stocks in there. And that is not really what we're trying to do. So we stick to longer term themes. It's not short term thought through. It's really a process. When is a theme a theme? What do we want to achieve? What is the problem that we try to solve? And then also put in sustainability, because that became, of course, more pronounced over the last 10 years. And it blends in nicely with thematic, the problem solving component of it.
So it sounds like there is a big field of different possibilities. You also mentioned sustainability and the wide field of potential topics. So I know, and today it's not about investment advice. We are discussing topics in general. But where do you believe are the biggest opportunities at the moment? In which topics? In which trends?
I mean, that is always what do we work on? What are we focusing on? I mean, we have right now a multipolar world. We deal with several issues that are different than 5 years ago already, be it on the geopolitics, on the technology side. Maybe to frame the discussion a little bit, we see the world in three broader megatrends, we call it. One is on the socio-demographic side, so there's always changes there. Second one on the technology. Technology transition is not new, not AI. We had other new transitions in the past. And the third one is on nature. Again, keep the problem-solving angle to that. And where we see interest lately and also a theme nicely evolving is in two fields. One, and I'm just using examples here, we have, of course. But one would be the circular economy. That is a concept within sustainability that really grasps and sticks with investors, similar in mobility. It's also a theme that evolves, and this is sometimes what we look for. Even at the beginning, when you launch a theme, you might not know what the next 10 years look like, but that's why we shy away from really narrowly defined themes and rather broader. But again, we're trying to solve problems with the mobility concept and also with circular economy, of course.
So with mobility, I can imagine what it means, but circular economy is for me a more abstract term, I would say. I also think in the way or along the way of permaculture. I'm a gardener as well, so circular economy is very tangible in the garden. But what does it mean in the economy?
I think the permaculture, which comes from permanent agriculture, as a term, I think that phrases it nicely within the economy. So the harmonious way pretty much between nature, economy, humans, everybody involved. And of course, the biggest solution that we need is for waste. Circular economy is fantastic in that way because it's much more than it used to be just recycling. That was the big debate. Or simple projects about recycle, reuse, etc. But it's much more than that. We've seen this over the past years where we moved to really avoid waste from the beginning on, from the design of a product, from the design of a process, of a service. And that is fascinating because that is attractive to a global set of companies and consumers across sectors. So it again nicely fits into thematic. We solve a problem. And here the strategy again goes further than recycling. It's reuse, it's upgrading existing product services. And most of the focus, as I said, on design, smart manufacturing. How can I really make it a full loop, no waste? And if there's waste, well, hopefully that will be biodegradable. And
allow me to dig in a bit more into that, because as a consumer, very often I have the impression that some of the products, they are constructed so they are not usable anymore after a certain amount of years. For example, a printer might not be working anymore after 10 years for some electronical defect, but in essence, the printer would still be okay. But I can't help, but sometimes I have the impression these things are kind of almost built into the solution so that consumers consume more and new products. So how do you find companies which actually work the other way around? They make more money in producing solutions which don't cause the waste at the beginning.
That is the tough part, to look under the hood, so to speak. And therefore it is critical also to understand from the beginning on how is the company designing the product? Who is involved in the design process? So think about software companies. So because a lot of software companies already have that task attached to it to really optimize the waste during the process. And there you can get a glimpse already what company is using what counterpart in the design process, and really what materials are used, what audience are you speaking to, what are infrastructure and supply chain requirements that you can actually take things back, or that it will be reused, or think broader, where maybe a bigger printer for a neighborhood. I mean, it's that you might, because you don't need a printer. It's similar to a car. The printer stands there for 99.9% of the time and doing nothing. So maybe there is more ways thinking about utilizing products during the design phase already.
I like this concept of a shared printer. That would actually work in many occasions, I assume, especially if you're living in a building with multiple apartments, for example.
Well, think about a concept where you don't need a printer at all.
Oh, even better.
That
yes.
is where you just need it for some official documents, and even that we have with digital assets going forward. So these are all concepts. Do we actually need the printer? Do we need the paper for that? Or so that's what we're looking in for, and what's next for circular.
Very interesting. You also mentioned before the topic of mobility. And I believe mobility is kind of intuitive what it means. So to come from A to B for individuals, but maybe also things, I would assume. So when I reflect on this topic, when I remind myself on the headlines in this topic, also Chinese companies, they are mentioned more in the news as well. And some years ago, I never read about Chinese companies in this field. So how do you deal with this topic, or how do you find the opportunities there, and how do these global trends influence your selection?
No, it's a very broad subject and lots to cover here. Let's start with mobility. Yes, it is bringing people from A to B, but do that in a sustainable way, in a less fossil using way. Do it in a safe way. We have millions of accidents during a year worldwide, so what can be prevented there? Starting with the sustainability part, of course, EV is on everyone's mind, and it's now becoming 20% of sales within Europe, even 50% in China. So it's a bigger number now. The impact is there. The US, we heard headlines from the government there. They're taking back some of the incentives, but even that market is growing. So the consumer wants it, and most of the consumers want it. And but we look beyond. As you said, China is big. The country gave a lot of incentives for the manufacturers, but more so for the users and purchasers of autos. So that industry really leapfrogged almost Europe and other parts of the world, and therefore of interest to us. A lot of competition, lots of car manufacturers in that space. Combine it also not just EV as the engine literally, but also tech. Modern cars are like really, it's like a movie theater, and you have a lot of technology involved, a lot of AI involved, and so think not a product with four wheels, but more a mega entertainment computer, whatever you want to have it. And China is almost leading in this, and but for us it doesn't matter. We globally. We have invested in China for quite some time now. But there's also more to mobility. So think about the whole autonomous driving movement. Yeah? Talking about safety, my colleagues told me the studies say if you have a whatever level 3 autonomous auto, the insurance claims are 90% less. I mean,
incredible.
We always want to be in control as human beings, but technology can do that pretty well as well. So, I mean, it's just early starts and numbers go up and down, but that is also a motivation. Having cars autonomously helps also the environment. You can utilize the asset auto or car much better. The car, similar to the printer mentioned, sits still 95%. Maybe we can smarter reroute autos that automatically drive themselves where they need it to be. So that's
very interesting. And how do you, I assume you have big research teams for any of the topics, be it circular economy or mobility. How do your teams proceed in choosing companies?
Yeah, that's at the end of the day, how do I bring this nice theme, the story, and make money also with that for investors? The team doesn't need to be big. The team needs to be curious and excited about what they do, and they need to be seasoned as well. So if you have iterations of a theme, of quarterly results, of news flow, of meeting companies, then you build a better opinion on what it is. So we do talk a lot to companies, of course. So that's the core. Our holdings, you want to know on the financial part what is going on there. We talk to industry experts. We talk to consultants, users. We go to trade fairs. There is the IAA in Germany for the autos, and we of course have other trade shows. So really inform a picture. At the end of the day, we're very fundamental oriented. We do analyze companies bottom up to figure out what is the upside potential within the theme, and also to rejuvenate, of course, the portfolio, because it's not a buy and hold. We have a longer term view, but we of course have a fiduciary duty to optimize the portfolio and to make returns. And also sustainability. That is also in Robeco's DNA, but also in Thematic's DNA. Think about regulation on the sustainability side. CO2, relevant driver for EVs, for instance. Our circular economy has a bunch of regulations coming up, the taxonomy in Europe. So it's a lot of work, but if you're dedicated, if you are focused on a theme, if you're passionate about it makes it much easier. So
passion is always good. It always helps. And I can see that Robeco, given you're for so many years passionate in thematic investing, you're also a very credible house of doing it. And also when it comes to credibility, definitely also sustainability. I mean, you have been in this field for many years before all the other asset managers or many of the other asset managers kind of jumped on this train. So in all the topics or in all the themes you're investing in, is sustainability kind of a persistent component, or how is it?
It is. We have a lot of Article 9 funds that we manage. So by definition, of course, also, as you mentioned, the history and the DNA of Robeco. But also think problem solving. Again, what I mentioned at the beginning, sustainability requires solutions. Equity investing could deliver one of them. There's many others, of course, and I would never claim that we help as an only factor in this. So we always look from the design of a theme already. There is a sustainable angle to that. The design of the universe that we can invest in, of course, is relevant. We have some noise lately about the acceptance of sustainability globally. The US was always a little bit skeptical, but even that's more pronounced. We stick to that. I mean, the problems are not going away. Climate change, biodiversity, social issues that we face more and more. So we're looking all into that and steer companies where possible also in that direction. We have really great, I have to say, sustainability research, and that goes hand in hand already with investment. That's what investors. It's not like we had it 20 years ago where you had a sustainability department there and the investors there. That all morphed into one unit and one team where we exchange on a daily basis issues. Sustainability also can help. It's not always a risk with CO2, for instance, but there could be also many new solutions coming from that angle. So we follow that very closely.
Yeah, and you have been highlighting many important points, and we are getting so often the question from our listeners, but also client of ours, how can I invest really sustainably? And I believe, or I think we can say that investing in themes, especially also how you manage the funds, this is really kind of a very true or sincere way of investing sustainably. Maybe also in contrast to some ETFs where just the percentage term of individual companies vary a bit if comparing the traditional and the sustainable version of the same index or same topic. So I think we can say if we properly invest in themes, especially when there is the angle of sustainability, this is a very true way of investing.
It's a true way. It depends on how you design it. You can have themes that are not falling into. You could launch a fossil fuel theme that is, of course, not necessarily sustainable. So it depends a little bit on the definition. The one thing you a little bit alluded to is definitely relevant. So thematic is always active from what we are doing, because you do want to change if some requirements within the theme, some definitions are not met by companies, or if sustainability criteria are not necessarily met. So you got to be nimble at that. More so from a thematic side, because as we discussed mobility 10 years ago, the autonomy and autonomous driving part was not really discussed, or circular, the design of manufacturing and products from the beginning on was known, but not really in investors' minds. So you got to be nimble, and that's what requires an active management. Also, a lot of ETFs are very focused on 10 stocks. So you do want to diversify a little bit. We're broader than that, of course. And that's a little bit
It's kind of the trade-off, right? I mean, if you have a properly managed strategy, then it's difficult to have it exchange traded and therefore offered in the traditional way. So with one price a day where a team is working on the strategy, and it's difficult then as a consequence to trade on an exchange.
Correct.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. But you have also ETFs in the offering, as far as I know.
Robeco offers ETFs as well. So we recently launched one more that's more really on the quant side, where we discover themes within an LLM, so with AI. And so it's a very close collaboration also with Thematic. We vet then, is that something that we would also see? And so we're trying to complement also the thematic lineup with interesting new ideas.
Yeah. So today we spoke about circular economy and mobility, but there are plenty more themes on which you offer as well. So what are the preconditions to pursue a certain topic when it comes to investing?
Number one is the discussion is always relevancy. If a theme is proposed, could be within the investment team, could come from sales, could be from anyone's observation. How relevant is it? Are we solving a problem? I always use the example of space. And in my previous managing partner, I love space. I'm fascinated by it. And the question was, well, how can we make money at the end of the day with that? Is it just a hobby? Is it something where people are interested in? Or can we make money? Flying people into the stratosphere, maybe not really the best business model down the road. I mean, it's fun, but is it really?
Is it sustainable?
Is it sustainable? Of course. Harvesting meteoroids, similar issue, right? Do we need, is this sustainable? So there were question marks. And sometimes you have to stick to the investment belief and process. And space has performed quite well over a shorter period of time, just because of the curiosity. So that is always, is the theme relevant? Can we make money with that at the end of the day? Are we solving a problem? Is it broad enough of a universe? Again, if I have 10 names and 10 companies globally, that doesn't solve the purpose or helps the purpose of diversifying. And do we have a process behind it? Do we have the knowledge? If you do not have really the expertise in circular economy or in mobility, you need to have some degree of knowledge. That is also critical. Is the team set up? So
listening to you, for me, really the big takeaway is how you approach different themes is, what is the problem we solve? And for me, this is really also tangible. And given investing for many people is quite an abstract action. But having in mind that you always try to solve a problem, or you invest in companies solving a real day problem in the end, makes it to me very interesting. And I can just encourage our listeners to check out your offering, your themes, and if there are any questions, as always, we are here. We are very glad to take your questions. You can just write them below the podcast or write us at hello@umushroom.com. Ralf, it was a big pleasure to have you here at the table in our tiny studio here in our office, and hopefully we can follow up on this topic in a few months' time and see where we stand. Where is mobility, or what is mobility doing? Maybe, well, we are neighbors, but maybe you come with a self-driven car, or we will see what's coming up, or maybe space is becoming really sustainably. So I'm extremely curious how our world is evolving, and looking forward to discussing with you these topics again in a few months' time. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Happy to keep the dialogue and to reflect back on how themes are doing. That's what we do daily.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you, and see you soon.
Where banks are silent, we speak. A podcast by UMushroom.